were to go back, if you guys were to go back and really just give yourself advice or someone who's just starting college advice, I guess what would be one piece of advice you'd offer?
I can start. For me, a piece of advice that I would give myself was to start early and, start doing your own research. I kind of expected it to be like, oh, I'm a finance major. And then someone tells me, oh, this is what finance majors do. They work in this, this, and this, and then you go and pick one. But it's not really that simple. You have to do your own research. You have to figure out, I don't know what banking is. I don't know what sales and trade are. So look it up, do your research, figure out what makes sense for you, what interests you. What does the day-to-day look like? So something that I can handle is something that actually interests me. So I would just put in a lot of the research and not just expect, a good job to fall into your lap or an opportunity to fall into your lap. You have to figure out, what exactly you're looking to do.
I can take the next one because I kind of will build off that. My big advice would probably be that a lot of, getting to your dream job is gradual. It may take an internship or two before you get to that big internship that'll lead you to the job that you really want. I know personally for me, I did 2 internships, 2 summers before I got Moody's. And I really used those 2 internships to kind of get me through the door at Moody's and give me, the boost that I needed to get there.
I guess I would say, I think start by taking classes that interest you, I would say. It's definitely tough. I mean, not tough, but if people took a gap year, we know YU gives credit. So you really have almost a year less, which gives you not only a year less of time to quote unquote figure it out, but even a summer less. But I don't think that should scare anybody. I think everyone should take the classes that interest them the most. And then naturally after a couple of semesters, maybe 2 semesters, you'll kind of gravitate towards what you're the most interested in. Meaning, no, I don't think anyone comes in on day one knowing exactly what major they want. They just take a couple classes, take some core classes, and I think you'll kind of just find your way after speaking with people. But I think definitely look at different types of subjects, and I think that's the best way to find out what you're really interested in.
Yeah, I think just building on what the 3 fellow panelists said, I think also something really important, in addition to doing your own research, is speaking to people early and often. Given that, like what Jacob said, we do start a year behind, and you never know who you speak to, who can end up helping you. Hindsight's all clear, but you never really know who you speak to that can really help you, whether it be getting you the interview or just providing clarity on what you may want to do in your future.
Yeah, that's definitely pieces of advice I've heard in the past. Just also a quick announcement: if everyone could please turn on their Zoom camera, just means a lot for the panelists. I think that just seeing a face and not just iPhone or a screen really enhances the event. With that being said, just moving on to the next question. So you guys mentioned the firms you guys worked at, all very respectable firms. Let's just get to the cut to the chase. Really, just how did you guys go about securing those internships? If you guys could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So, like many of the other jobs on Wall Street, investment banking and Goldman specifically, they start doing their recruiting basically a full year before the internship starts. So you have to be a year and a half before the internship. A year and a half, you need to be spacing out your time and making sure you know exactly when your interviews will be, how to get an interview, how to network. So the way that I went around that process is through the investment banking society that YU has, which was super helpful in making sure that we'd be prepared for networking and interviews. So that process kicked off for me my first semester in YU. After only being on campus for a month, we had interviews for Investment Banking Society, which if anyone has any questions, you could reach out to me about. But anyway, so the Investment Banking Society kind of helps students out if they're interested in Wall Street careers, specifically banking. And through them, I was able to find a bunch of mentors, YU Connects, start networking a lot, and eventually you get, a higher view, which you guys, already know about, will learn about. Higher views basically are these online videos that, you have to talk to the camera and pretend that you're interviewing in front of a real person. So I had one of those, and then a super day interview is something that a lot of banks have that I'm sure the other panelists can talk about as well. Where I had 3 interviews back to back. They ask you a bunch of questions ranging from financial questions to behavioral. Then after that, in September of last year, I got an offer to work at Goldman, and I worked there this past summer. That was basically my process.
I would say that for myself, I think the number one thing is, I mean, the summer before your junior internship, I think is you have to, first thing you have to do is put out physical applications to essentially everything that you may or even may not be interested in. No one's going to consider you, I mean, it's an easy thing when you think about it, but apply to everything you can think of. After that, you only have so much time. I think that you should take your time, try to focus on what you really want. I mean, I guess for Adam, it might be a little bit easier if he knew you wanted to do investment banking for a couple of years. But for those of you who don't necessarily know exactly what you want to do within finance, I think you should definitely apply to everywhere. And then after that, the main thing is definitely trying to connect with people at those firms, alumni, anyone you can think of, even sending out cold emails. And hopefully once you get your foot in the door, I think that the main thing is showing interest. Yes, there's a bunch of technicals depending on the position you're applying for that you definitely need to know. And if you don't know those requisite things, they're probably not going to consider you, but that's the easy part. There's a lot of books for those things, and that's not going to separate you from anyone next to you. And I think the main thing that's going to help you get a job is showing that you're truly interested in the subject. I know they asked me, they said, why should I take you over another kid? Which is a great question. A lot of kids go to much better schools. I mean, I don't know about better, but ranked higher, we'll say. And there's no reason that you're not going to be smarter than the next guy in the room. You might be as smart as them, but there's always going to be someone smarter than you. But what you can do for sure is show your interest. And if you're genuinely passionate about the thing that you're interviewing for, they're going to be able to see that. And they want you, and you have to be personable. And that's what's really going to separate yourself. And that's not even something you can learn. That's just, if you're here, you're already showing that you're interested in this. And I think that's going to come from just reading and just doing your research. And I think that most people especially who are conducting interviews, will be able to see that. I think that's probably what's going to put you over the top of the competitors.
I'll go next. A lot of what Jacob said is what I was planning on saying, but I think the most important thing is obviously knowing what you're doing and like the technical questions. But I think in the behavioral aspect is really where you separate yourself. I know at my super day, there were 11 candidates, and I think 2 or 3 of them ended up getting the offer, which means like you made it that far, and like that's really impressive. But I think the fact that you have to set yourself apart from your competition is what really does it for you. Whether it be knowing the information, whether it be knowing your own story, or whatever it really is, I think the most important thing is really being able to set yourself apart from the competition. And then each man to his own is to what it really is. But like for me, it's like knowing my stories better and being able to tell your story or knowing the information better than someone else.
Yeah, my story kind of relates to, the rest of the panelists. I would say for me, the summer before my Moody's internship, I interned at a small ratings agency that focused on insurance companies. So what I decided to do is, before that summer, by the way, I think I applied to 80 to 100 places. That for sure is very important. Definitely network if you can. I wasn't the best networker, but I definitely, put my due diligence into sending out those applications. I kind of fell into ratings a little bit because I had this small ratings insurance company that gave me a job 2 summers ago. And I basically decided after that summer, I was gonna use my assets that I got there, all the experience I got there, to try and leverage it at a new place, at a better place, whether that was Moody's or the truth is, so I worked on the investments of these insurance companies. So I decided I was either gonna go for, I liked the insurance aspect, and I liked the ratings aspect. I thought it was a very cool industry. Also, as the other panelists said, it's something that I kind of learned on the way and learned to love. And I decided, so I was either going to do, the investment side of insurance companies or Moody's, S&P, Fitch, one of those. And when I got to that interview, when, there was a phone round and then an in-person round. When I got to that interview, I was able to kind of leverage what I already had done. I had written up a report at the smaller place. And when I got to Moody's at my interview, I handed them the report that I had done with my name on it, which kind of leads me into the second part of, my advice would be, or how I got it. which I know Zach talked about a little bit, which is setting yourself apart. Well-roundedness is very, very important. So for me, I can write a little bit more. I'm a writing center tutor. So I would capitalize on that on every single interview I went to, because it's something that I know that a lot of people in business don't necessarily have. And I was able to prove that with the report that I had written the summer before. So when you like combine all those things, leveraging what I did before plus the writing center, it really set me apart. And, I got, I think after my in-person interview, which they do a little bit later than the banks. I know the banks do it much earlier, as Adam had said. Moody's did this in like November, December time, but still apply September time. You got to apply early. I think I had my in-person interview, and within 2 days they called me and gave me the job. So it's definitely very important to try and set yourself apart.
No, I definitely agree with that. You guys kind of mentioned, YU's not the average college, not as ranked as high, but this definitely does not mean that, we're not anywhere as good. We send candidates pretty much everywhere. But was there anything maybe from a class or an extracurricular that you felt really helped push you over the top, or really just maybe stirred your interest in really pursuing the job you guys wanted?
Yeah, I think one thing that you could do in YU that it's pretty easy is to start a club or to join a club. And for me, I know my first semester on campus, I started a private equity and venture capital club, which was something that I had known very little about, but I figured, why not throw my name out there? And I was able to use that to speak to private equity and venture capital for some pretty senior people, for some pretty cool companies. They're like, hey, I'm running this club at YU. Would you like to come in and speak? And through doing that, I started networking and meeting new people, and then learning about, what should I be doing, what should I be doing to get a job at your firm and things like that. So I didn't end up working at either private equity or venture capital firms, but that was just an opening into the finance industry as a whole. And I was able to go from there and start networking and meeting more people, and that gave me the confidence to really get out there and go after a job. So the clubs, starting a club and joining clubs are really important, and that helped me out a ton.
I think that, some of what Adam said. I was actually, just for reference, I started out pre-med for about 1.5 years into YU, but while doing that, one cool thing about YU is, there's so many different options. So I was always into MEAD, which I think is very big. You hear a lot of great speakers, you do a lot of great projects. And then just taking class, listen, at the end of the day, 98% of what you need for a job, you'll learn at the job. So it's mostly about showing interest, but little things like taking principles of finance, and then I'm doing trading. I was trading bonds, so I knew what simple bond math was. Like I knew at least I knew what a bond was coming in, which is funny to say, but it's actually more than everyone at least knew coming in. So that's important. I learned another thing that I saw this summer, which I thought, hey, it's like great that I had that background coming in. So I think definitely taking introductory finance classes if you want to go into the world of finance is important. And then as Alan said, clubs, I recommend to meet, obviously. Keep in touch with Nathan. He'll tell you all his events. Keep coming to things like these, but definitely take advantage of all that stuff. But do that while still doing what you're interested in. If you love writing as well, you should definitely be a writing major. But just make sure you take those at least introductory classes to get you in the door.
Yeah, I think taking the classes also is obviously a classic, but I think then again, setting yourself apart is a key component. So like say for Avi's case, it was his writing center tutoring. So that's something that sets you apart from your competition, because then hopefully you get to that stage, and that's what's most important. I think for me though, when I came to this event 2 years ago, it was in the Sky Caf back when we were in person. But I spoke to one of the seniors who had a job at an investment bank, and he said you should speak to every single senior here and find out what they did to get this job. And so I didn't even end up speaking to everyone, but I think finding out from people immediately after they went through the process themselves is a key component to ending up getting the job on Wall Street. Different people have different stories. Like you get to hear different stories from different people. That's why I think like the most important thing is really speaking to people and hearing their story and hearing their 2 cents on the process. But I think if you speak to enough people, you really get a good background and a good understanding of what the recruiting process really is like, even if it's just 1 year later.
Yeah, I would say there's one of the events that YU runs that like What Else on Wall Street event in the middle of the year. And I remember one of the things that I learned that one of the speakers at that event had said that, Wall Street is more than just banking. There's a lot more to do on Wall Street. at the event was somebody from Moody's. I think it was the first time I really had ever heard. I had heard of Moody's before, but I hadn't really thought about it that much. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that there are really a lot of options to do on Wall Street that aren't just, if you're not into banking as much. More than that, also, I would say, similar to what Jacob said, I glitched out at one point, so I hope I don't mess up what you said, but I'm an economics major, so I didn't have, necessarily as much of the technical skills, but I originally was minoring in finance, didn't end up working out for whatever reason. But it was very, very important that I had the intro to Excel, intro to accounting, intro to finance under my belt, just so that I knew the basics going into Moody's. Not to say that, you can't succeed without it, but it definitely will help you a lot overcome that initial hurdle.
Perfect. And then just one more question, I guess, until we get about like before the job, and then we're going to talk about more about like the actual job. I think someone touched on networking, and just for me, I'm a big networker. I try to network as much as I can, but if you guys could talk about maybe effective networking skills, just a quick tip about what worked for you, or maybe what worked for somebody else that you guys know.
I think when it comes to YU students networking, there's two different approaches. Some people implement both, which is probably the best thing to do, but approach one is go for the people that you know. So that's people who graduated YU, seniors in YU, there's someone in your community, in your shul, someone that your family's friends with. If you know anyone who's like a more senior member at a firm that you're interested in working at, just reach out to them. Like 99% of the time, they are willing to help, or at least talk to you on the phone. They won't just say no to you because you know who they are. Even if you have an idea of who they are, just say, hey, I go to YU, you daven at my shul, I saw you work at this firm, like, can we grab coffee? People are interested in doing these things. And it works really well. I've had a lot of success doing that. And the other school of thought is just, just quantity. Just send out tons of emails, go on LinkedIn, find anyone that works at JP Morgan and just email them, hey, I'm interested in doing trade. Hey, I'm interested in, you have your formats. You say your name, where you're from, why you're interested in it, something to make it a little bit more personal. And then, just hope if you send out, 800 emails over a semester, like you'll probably have, 50 calls, which is great. So those are the two schools of thought. Some people, and personally, I tried going for more intimate connections that I had through my community and family. But I know lots of people send out tons of emails, and some people were really successful with that. So, either one works. If you're into it, go for both. But those are like the two main pathways that I saw.
Yeah, I think both are really important, but something that I found really helpful was emailing people who also didn't go to target schools, because obviously the target schools are taking up much of the spots. But what I found, even during the summer, and I was just cold messaging people within the Morgan Stanley system, was like, oh, you're a non-target, like, oh, I'll be your brother kind of thing. And like that ended up becoming one of my closest mentors, just because like he went to like Baruch, say, or one of the CUNYs, and like he identified that we both didn't go to a target school, so we had to hustle more and we had a harder path to get in. They didn't necessarily come to campus, but still. Oh, sorry. A target school is where the banks like look primarily. So mostly the Ivies, NYU Stern, Stanford. That's where they're targeting. That's where they're getting most of their primary intern class from. They do obviously leave spots for other non-target kids. So meaning a non-target is anyone else who the bank isn't necessarily coming to their school to recruit from, but they do still accept into the programs.
I would say that, number one, I think I mentioned this. If you after you apply to every bank, you should definitely go onto LinkedIn and type in a bank or a position, Yeshiva University, or on Google. Every single person who went to YU, you guys should be emailing 100%. Almost everyone will probably take your call, and just for the same reason that us four are here speaking with everyone here, it's because a lot of people took the time to speak with us, and people genuinely care about other YU people doing well. So, and I think that everyone should have some younger people. It could be us, it could be another recent graduate. Those people you can kind of ask the more informal questions to. I'm sure all of us will be willing to help anyone out. And obviously there's many, many more people like us, or at least a lot of people like us who are definitely willing to help more informally. And then at the end of the day, though, it's going to help a lot if you can find someone who's been there a little bit longer to help at least get your name out there. Because as we know, like YU is a great school, obviously, but there's a million people who just throw in those applications online. So just to be able to get your name out there, that could be from emailing random people. I mean, I know a lot of people who just cold emailed, make a good impression. You just have to have a conversation with them, and then hopefully you're betting on yourself at that point. If you show that you're interested, you're a personable guy or girl, and everything, they'll pick up on that, and I mean, they'll definitely want to help you. People are willing to help you. So I think that's some of the main advice I would give.
Yeah, just I mean, there's not much to add to the last three people, but for sure, reach out. I'll be honest, I wasn't the best networker, but I did network pretty well for Moody's, and that definitely helped me along the way. Network with people, anybody who you know at the firm, anybody who would know somebody. One of my connections that I got at Moody's was somebody at my school knew somebody who worked at Moody's. Like, even through that way, there's a way to make a connection, even if you don't think that there's a way. That would be, as much as you can, try and get in touch with those types of people. And also, once you get those conversations, make sure you have a plan for those conversations. You don't want to walk into, go into a phone call, even with somebody younger, with hey, I'm just curious or whatever. A lot of times these people are there to answer your questions. So make sure you have something to say to at least get the conversation flowing.
Perfect. And then I guess just shifting more to the actual internship itself. So without getting too detailed, could you guys give us a day-to-day, life in Zach, life in, summer, summer internship in the life of each of you guys? Avi, if you could start off.
Yeah, sure. So it was definitely a definitely weird summer. I would say so. I don't know. I'm pretty sure this happened with most of us, but they didn't cancel my internship. They cut it in half and put it online. So definitely a weird summer. They also shifted the entire internship program. Instead of us, being assigned a department and doing projects for that department, they did an internship program where the focus was twofold: training and introducing us to the different departments. So Moody's has a lot of different sectors that they rate. They rate basically everything. So they had different presentations for us throughout the summer, so that when we would start full time, assuming that we start full time, we would be better educated on where we would want to go, which I thought was definitely very cool, because you got to kind of, you saw that they wanted you to know where you wanted to be. They wanted to introduce you to everything. So that was one part. And the other part was training. We did a lot of accounting training, finance training, just to, I guess, get us, used to that type of thing that we would have to start doing. And then at the end, we had a mock rating, a mock project that we had to do. So that was kind of how those 5 weeks went for me.
I guess, yeah, I mean, first of all, I did trading, JP Morgan. If whatever I say, there's going to be a lot more to be said. So if anyone's interested, please reach out. But just AV actually, so Moody's is a rating agency and they rate bonds. And my group, I was in credit trading, which is basically corporate bonds. And we sell those bonds based on the ratings, I guess, that AV's and his company and other companies give. They're separated into different classes, the ones that are rated very well, medium, low. So I'm going to be placed in the high yield trading group, which is companies not really in bankruptcy, but not doing so well. So my day was, it was supposed to be a 10-week internship, cut down to 5 weeks. We spent about a week and a half training. So as I said, you need background knowledge, but you're going to come across anything you need to know for the job. They're going to tell you about that. So it's mostly about passion to get in the door. And then once you're there, they'll teach you everything you need to know. It's a steep learning curve. Most of it's language you hear traders talking to each other. I had no idea what they were saying, because they speak this in acronyms and slang and all this stuff that you can only learn over time. And trading, obviously, interns can't actually trade. You need a license to do that. But after that, we spent our time pitching different trade ideas. So usually when we think about trading and investing, I mean, at least myself included, before this year, I usually think about stocks, but credit trading is actually much, much, much bigger. And I had to think about things a little bit differently. If anyone interested, they should definitely do some reading on that. But we had to pitch different bonds. So I learned what goes into thinking a bond, I guess, is either good or bad, stuff like that. But the main thing that I took out of the summer the most, which I think everyone can already do without an internship, was speaking to people. Once hopefully everyone gets an internship, it's for whatever amount of time it is, you have a free pass to talk to anyone in the entire firm, maybe besides the CEO I couldn't talk to, but I can email any MD I want and they'll see, hey, an intern wants to talk, they'll make some time for you. And that's an unbelievable feeling. So I learned a ton, and everyone should start that now, because a lot of people will take your calls, and then hopefully when everyone gets an internship, you'll remember this, that the main thing you can do is reach out to anyone you can, because they're going to have a lot to say to you. You're going to learn a ton, and you can do projects on your own time. You can do reading on your own time. You have a certain amount of time where anyone will take your call. So I think that was the main thing I got out of my internship that I recommend everyone doing.
Yeah, just piggybacking on Jacob's point right there, I think something that I noticed when I spoke to people this summer was how when they got like the bulk of their messages come like application time in March, April, May, June, they were ignoring a lot of the messages. But I think starting now in October, September, October, November is when people are more open to emails and speaking to people, because they don't have as many calls coming. Granted, if then everyone says that, it'll be different. But for the time being, I think starting out now, just reaching out to people, having your questions prepared is really important. For our internship from Morgan Stanley, it was cut from 10 weeks to 6 weeks, again, all virtual. Our first week was training, and then the last 5 weeks were work on the desk. Mostly in risk is you're doing a lot of desk work, and on the side, you're managing your summer project. But because of the environment, it was hard to do desk work. So my summer project was mainly developing it. I worked in tailored lending, which is dealing with ultra high net worth individuals' loans. So say an ultra high net worth individual wanted to buy, say, a football stadium, and they need a ton of money to finance that acquisition. They're going to go to Morgan Stanley and say, can we borrow this amount of money? So in risk is doing the due diligence behind the decision making. So it's saying, okay, if we lend against this collateral, how is it worth it for us? So what I developed was a downside scenario user guide, which essentially develops a downside stress, which is how bad can the asset perform given who knows, maybe a pandemic. So basically it was a lot of market analysis and a lot of research and a lot of speaking to people. But what I developed over the 5 weeks was developing a baseline stress, which would be basically say how bad this asset can really perform, and then how would it perform on the bank's balance sheet.
Yeah, so my summer, I was working on the investment banking division at Goldman. I worked on the real estate classic team, which means that I'm mostly working on M&A, IPOs, and equity and debt offerings for companies. So like a day in the life for this summer was definitely interesting. It was also virtual, cut in half. So it was 5 weeks long. We had about 3 days of training, and then we went straight to the desk, which was definitely a little bit intimidating and a little bit scary. But I spent most of my summer staffed on one deal. So my days went something like waking up and getting on at like 8:30 or 9 a.m. And then basically sitting at my desk and my monitors until probably 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night was like a usual night. And that would be doing mostly PowerPoint work or Excel work or looking through documents for lawyers or speaking to PR people, because I was working on a live deal that our client was going to be buying a public hotel company, and they would essentially become public because of the acquisition. So there was a lot of moving pieces and a lot of lawyers involved. So it was a really interesting deal. I came in like right when the deal was closing. The deal didn't close yet, so it's all not public information, so I can't talk much about it necessarily. But it was really interesting, but it meant on a good night, I would log out at around midnight. On a bad night, closer to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's usually like an 80 to 90 hour work week. I'd say it's probably typical for investment banking. It was closer to 80 hours during my internship, being that we were online. So basically what that means is that investment banking is a lifestyle that is pretty rough. It's not a lot of fun. I worked every Sunday. It was only 5 weeks, but I worked all day on Sunday for all 5 weeks. Goldman actually gives analysts and interns off on Saturdays, protected Saturdays, so that Shabbos totally was not a problem. However, I was told that for an analyst, Shabbos will be a problem, even though they say that they give time off. That's usually not the case, so we'll see. That should be fine, but it's definitely could be a brutal lifestyle at times. I didn't really have any issues because it was only 5 weeks, so I just slept after the internship. But it was a great experience, and it's really great for anyone who loves, high pressure, high intensity atmosphere and can handle the hours.
I was want to you back on that real quick, Nathan. I mean, I don't know if you're going to ask this, but I think obviously this is not only hearing from us, but obviously I think this is the main time everyone should figure out within finance, the big world, what you want to do. And it's not only about the product or the work that you're doing, but a lot of it's the lifestyle, as Adam was saying. So you have to figure out, are you someone who is able, not only able, but is interested in working 80, 90-hour work weeks? And if so, if that excites you, that might be around for you. But obviously, I mean, I think Avi and Zach can speak more about them. At least trading is more closer to like 70 hours. It's more early morning. You're probably going to have to get in the office around 6:30. We usually logged on around 6:30, but we were done. I mean, we were cramming 5 weeks, so we probably did a little bit more than we needed to, but usually out by 7. And once you get even more senior, closer to 6 or 5, because the market closes at 4 o'clock. So I think that's a big deal. Like people obviously, I think often overlook that and, oh, what am I interested in? That's very important. But at the end of the day, you're a human being first, and hopefully everyone's gonna have families and other commitments. So I think it's a big thing to look at as well. And that's gonna come from speaking with people in the industries and finding out what suits you.
It's definitely a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And then I guess, especially with this summer, you guys all mentioned that it's cut in half. It was virtual. In addition to, the longer hours than you guys would normally be accustomed to. If you guys could pick one challenge that was maybe in the office or outside the office that you guys faced, and maybe how you guys went about that.
Maybe you want to go? All right, I could go. One challenge that I definitely had that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting the biggest challenge to be the hours, and I found it not as bad because I didn't have to get to the office and back. I would literally just turn on my computer in the morning and just turn it back off right before I go to sleep. But for me, one of my biggest issues was that because banking is all, it all surrounds, it all revolves around the client. So if the client emails you or you get an email, you have to respond to something right away. It has to get done. It doesn't really matter what time it is or what's going on. So there's always a pressure that you need to be plugged in. So I had my emails on my phone. That meant, if I was eating lunch and I got a ding, I would run from my table to go back to the desk all the time, back and forth. So that was definitely, it was pretty intense. I got married right before the summer started. So I'd be sitting and talking to my wife and I just get a ding and automatically pull up my phone and look at it right away. And that's something that a lot of analysts have told me that they have. Whenever they get a text, whenever their phone buzzes, they automatically look it up. And it's not, a great habit to have to always be on your phone or always be plugged in. But that was something that I struggled with a little bit, was always being plugged in. And there's never like time off. It's 11 o'clock. If I want to cool down and watch TV, you still have to have your phone ready to go just in case you get an email. So that was something that was difficult.
I could say for me, I think the biggest hesitance, my biggest struggle was the hesitance to reach out to people, especially being an intern. Virtual, you don't really know so much. And what a lot of people who interned previously said, how easy it is to just go tap your manager on the shoulder or go tap your buddy on the shoulder or someone you work with on the shoulder, because you're all sitting next to each other in the same team. But when you're virtual, it's kind of a struggle. Like, oh, are they busy right now? Do they now want to meet with me over Zoom or over a quick call? But I think the biggest hurdle was the biggest thing was getting over that hurdle and realizing that they're here for you. And the purpose of your manager, your senior mentor, and your buddy is for you to grow here and for you to perform well. And so even if it means them staying 10, 15, 20 minutes later in the day, a lot of people are really open to it. So I think it's something important to consider. Hopefully next summer when you guys intern, or in 2 summers, won't be virtual, but it's just something important to consider, that people really do cut out time for you, even if they seem really busy.
I guess the challenge I had was kind of separating for myself when you're in work and when you're not in work. I guess it was kind of more different for Adam. I guess he said he always had to wait on his phone because I guess banking is very much, they can ping you at any time. In trading, at least kind of going back to what I previously said, lifestyle-wise, trading is very much you're in it when you're in it, and when you're not in it, you're not working. You're in there from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once you leave the office, there's no market going on. Yeah, you should read the Wall Street Journal maybe before you go to bed and when you wake up in the morning, but no one's pinging you. No one's getting you back. You never have to work the weekends. That's another lifestyle thing, but a hard thing because we were online this summer. It was kind of, the lines were blurred. Because there was no leaving the office. The office was at my desk, and if I was in the apartment, I was always, maybe even, I didn't have to. It's like, you just like, oh, do I have to tune in and check back an email? But you're not thinking that if I was working in person, I wouldn't have access to my email anymore. And I think that's, I mean, it was a little, I only had a little bit of a taste of it because it was only 5 weeks, but that's something that everyone's going to have to balance moving forward, is how do you balance your work time with your personal time? Because at the end of the day, as we said, like, your personal time is very important as well. So I think that's something that you can only master over time. And 5 weeks was definitely a nice trial run, but that was definitely something I had to figure out over the summer, something I worked with.
Yeah, my response to this question is probably a combination of Zach and Jacob's. So Moody's advertised our internship when I went in for the interview. They were very much like, this is at 5 o'clock for your internship. Like, we don't really, like, we want you to have a life. We want you to have a summer. But with a virtual internship, and they sent us a computer, the computer is sitting in my bedroom, and we have to get through certain trainings, you know, we were going to do it. Nobody's going to, you know, say, oh, it's too much work, because truthfully, it wasn't so crazy. You know, we weren't working, you know, okay, so we had to do a couple nights till 11 o'clock at night. It's not so crazy. But definitely the fact that the computer was always in my room, to keep going back, you had to keep going back to it, keep checking the emails, making sure that you got through everything you need to get through. At the end, we had this project, and, you know, our group worked late nights for, you know, that whole week that we were doing that project. So that for sure was, you know, something that was very difficult, and just kind of, you know, a product of coronavirus, you know, internships. And the second thing, you know, as Zach said, was, you know, and as Jacob said, you have a lot of opportunity to network at your internships. You have basically everybody's email, and you can contact whoever you want. It's much easier to literally knock on their door, pop your head in their office, especially for certain people on your team, than to schedule a meeting through email, see if they have time, 30-minute slot. It's a lot harder, both in terms of just pure networking, and also just if you want to talk to somebody on your team, talk to your manager, see what's going on. It's a much more difficult kind of interaction.
Great. Then I guess we have one last question, and then I'm going to open the floor to maybe if you guys can personal message me. We'll take 1 or 2 questions depending on the time. But yeah, you guys just kind of transitioning from the summer itself to really securing the offer, right? So you guys are all here because you had the summer and you secured the offer. So what steps can you I guess speak about, or just kind of any pieces of advice about what qualities or characteristics do firms take, you know, when looking to extend the candidate full time? You know, it's pretty cutthroat, but I'd love, you know, to hear, I guess, if you guys had some pieces of advice.
So one thing I think as a whole, Goldman gave out a lot of full-time offers, which is really great given, you know, the hiring problems that a lot of people are having right now. You know, it's not so easy getting out of college, but for the people who had the internship, they gave out, I don't know the exact numbers, but they gave out a lot of return offers, so they were pretty easy. But generally, when it comes to my team, at least, they were looking for someone who put in a lot of hours, who really was there at all times, who was responsive. And the most important thing was, not only are you there and not only are you doing the work, but what's your attitude? You have to be, you know, if it's late at night, instead of just being like, this is crazy, I'm not doing this, or this is crazy, I'll do it, but I really don't want to be here. You have to, you know, you're on the phone with your team, you know, they want to see that you're still in an okay mood, you're still fun to work with, the culture is still okay, you're able to do things and move on with it. And that applies even if it's not the most exciting work. I got tasked my entire last week. I was tasked on doing research on a bunch of companies to use as comps to compare them to the company that we were looking at. And I was just scrolling through, you know, work that anyone at all with the Google could do, going through real estate companies and figuring out, you know, what's their assets under management, what's their PE and things like that, and just listing the stuff on Excel. Not fun to work at all. They're looking for someone who will take it, who will do it, and says, you know, I'm an intern, I'm the bottom of the bottom right now, and that means I get the grunt work. So they're looking for someone who's able to do that, and it was given that it's 5 weeks, it's easy to take that. So I think they gave a lot of people return offers, but as long as you're able to grind, you should be fine.
I think that every firm and every line of business is different in terms of the percentage of return offers. And they always say, hey, we hire interns with the intent of bringing them back. And that's what they told us. And to be honest, at the end of the summer, a lot less people got offers than I thought. So I'm glad I didn't know that at the beginning. That would have been a little bit stressful, but I don't think that's something anyone should worry about going in. The main things that I think allow you to get an offer are the same things that got you into that seat in the first place. It comes with being personable and showing a true interest in what you're doing. And I mean, the projects are going to be prerequisites to put you in the conversation, just like your resumes are a prerequisite to put you in the conversation, but that's not going to get you a job. It's going to come from reaching out to people. It's going to come from showing interest, because they're going to teach you everything you need to know on the job, so that you don't need to know anything going in. I mean, it's going to help, but you don't necessarily, it's all about reaching out to people. I mean, I spoke to an MD, a family friend at a completely different bank, and he told me that some of the people, he said that he's a banker, and he said that some of the people, his interns, had this project, and they were actually, the project was to work on a deal that he was actually heading the deal. And it's a small company, and people knew that he was working on it, and he got, and I think 1 out of like 5 interns reached out to him, even have a conversation. And just like, that's, he said that's completely ridiculous, and it showed really poorly on those kids. As we said earlier, everyone's going to take your call, and the more people you talk to, and the more people who, when they sit around the table at the end, and it often works like this, they sit around the table and they say, hey, who should we take? And if they say, someone says, hey, I like Zach Lowinger, and someone else is like, who's Zach Lowinger? That's a problem for Zach Lowinger. But if everyone says, oh, I spoke with Zach Lowinger, I thought he spoke very well, and he seems really interested, he'd be a great candidate, that's going to help over someone if 3 out of the 5 people at that table never spoke to that kid. So I think it's the main thing you're going to do, because you're going to show very little skill in a 5-week period, even a 10-week period. The way you're going to separate yourself is talking to everyone, at least on a surface level. And then, I mean, there's only so much time, probably diving in with a few of those people. But more importantly, I don't know how everyone else's internship was like, but if you have a choice between a couple different options, like we had, I was in credit trading, but there were 5 different desks within credit trading. So I knew I wanted to do only 2 of those desks, and they were all giving out offers, but I only wanted 2 of those desks. So you focus your time on there and be very transparent with them. You could say, I really want to work for you. I really like this desk. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, if you do that, then it worked out where I already knew that I was going to be able to come back already 3 weeks into a 5-week internship, because everyone's very transparent. They need you. That's why they hire interns. They're not doing anyone any favors. You're going to be a huge asset to that firm, and that's why they take you. They like to build talent from the bottom up. So just show them that you're willing to put in that work, be very, very transparent, and try to speak to everyone you can.
I think there are a few things that really get people full-time offers, but like Jacob said, I think one of, if not the most important, is everyone knowing your name. Given I didn't work on a rotational basis, I worked on one team which had about 40, 45 people, and you can't reach out to every single person. But when when your managing director talks to your other intern's managing director, he says, oh, did you speak to this kid? I think it's really important, even on a lower level, even an associate or a VP or an ED, an executive director level. People knowing your name and knowing you're willing to work hard, even on not the most exciting task, is really important. Like Adam, one of my mini side projects this summer involved a ton of data collection from online. Like anyone could have done it, just formatting into an Excel sheet, making it look good and presenting it, cutting it down into one slide. And I think your attitude in that kind of situation really, really is important, because they know these tasks aren't the most exciting tasks. You're an intern, especially in a virtual situation. You're an intern. It's like there's only so much you could really do. But having a positive attitude and showing that you care and you're competent enough to do the work they want you to do is really important. But I think lastly, the most important thing is being personable. A lot of jobs in finance require tons of hours of work. I know banking is even more. And you need to be personable. You need to connect with people on more of a human level. So for me, sports was really great for that. Thank God a lot of people in my group really followed sports and really followed the same sports leagues that I did. So that was a great point of conversation for us. When, say, there was a lag time before the meeting started and it was just 3 people, and it's you, an associate, and a VP, and then you can just talk to them about sports. They see that human aspect of you that they may not have seen otherwise. And I think that was definitely an important factor. In addition to obviously doing the work well and not making too many mistakes, but I think connecting on a personable level is one of, if not the most important thing.
Yeah, really, you want to show that you want to work, that you can work hard, and that you're easy to work with. A big part of my internship was accounting training and financial modeling training, which as an economics major, I really had very little of that. Obviously you want to make sure you show that you put in a lot of work and that you do well on those things, but that's not really, for me, I knew that wasn't like what was getting me through the door. What was getting me through the door was, talking to everybody on my team, reaching out to the people on my team. When I would have my one-on-one meetings with my managers, make sure that I showed interest, ask the right questions, and that will really, when they then ask your manager, what did you think of your intern? they'll have only positive things to say, and they'll be able to talk about certain things that you guys talked about.
Perfect. I know we're getting late, so we're going to just ask, we have one question from the crowd, just a quick response. So the question is like this. So you guys kind of mentioned different phone conversations and, just kind of what the mentality should be, but should it be more, you have, let's say 5-6 questions prepared, or should you kind of just go with the flow and see how the conversation is going and, touch upon that human aspect that I think Zach spoke about?
I think something important is to always being able to follow the conversation. Like for me, going into every conversation I had like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 back pocket questions in case like the conversation went dry, or like I just had things I wanted to genuinely ask. But I think knowing about the person you're speaking to is extremely important, but also being able to follow the conversation and being able to hold a little bit in what they're saying is extremely important.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, when you start your conversation, you want to take it, wherever the person brings the conversation, you just go with the flow. They want to talk about your school or asking questions about Yeshiva, which, by the way, is just a factor. Anyone who is not done the recruiting interview process, everyone calls YU Yeshiva. You just have to get used to it. You go to Yeshiva, you're a Yeshiva student, just whatever, that's a side point. But anyway, so they would ask you, oh, where's Yeshiva? What's this? Just be ready to speak about anything. And then, like Zach said, you want to have your questions just in case, but you don't want it to be like an awkward transition. You don't want to be talking about school and then talking about where they went to school and whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, so what deal are you working on? Like, then be like, well, we're just talking about school. It's kind of weird. So you want to be able to kind of go with the flow and, make sure you have good transitions in your conversation. And, if you have enough phone calls, you'll definitely see that some people are just not interested in speaking, and that's fine. You might be talking for 4 minutes and like the person's giving you like 2-word answers. It's not the end of the world. Thank you so much for your time. I understand that you're busy, and that's it. So, don't be afraid to have these phone calls. Just go for it. Your first few might be a little bit more awkward because you don't really know what you're doing, but practice makes perfect. And if you have enough calls, you get really good at it.
Definitely have some back pocket questions in case the conversation just kind of stops at a point, but obviously you're either going to ask you about yourself, and if not, talk about yourself, talk about your background, talk about what you're interested in. That's always important. And then I think you should obviously always ask them what they do and hear a little bit about them. But I mean, listen, at least if someone's calling me, I don't want to hear a question like, tell me about a time that you failed. Like, that's not so interesting, and it's not necessary to hear from someone when you're speaking to in a 15-20 minute phone call. Like, don't just have a written down thing and just ask those questions. I mean, you could have a couple of questions. I'll take that back. If you're truly interested in that, ask that, but don't ask that to check a box. So you have 15 to 20 minutes, ask the questions you're very interested in. And hopefully those questions also happen to be intelligent questions, and you're going to make a good impression on them. But more importantly, this phone call is likely going to be for you because you're going to talk to arguably over 100 people. And in terms of securing a job, it's going to come down to get your foot in the door, maybe 1 or 2 people helping you out at the firm you end up working at. So that's important, but those percentages are very low. Most of the phone calls, most of what's going to come out of those things is just your knowledge that you're going to get from them. It's not necessarily going to be hard. Like, you're not going to necessarily see the fruits of your labor right away, but it's about learning. So ask questions you're truly interested in, but also show curiosity and show, I guess, you did your homework. If you're going to speak to someone who has a certain job, probably look up what that is. If you're going to speak to Zach Lowinger and he's in risk management, yeah, he told you a little bit about that, but look a little bit more into it. Maybe like, he shouldn't have to necessarily explain to you fully what a rating agency does. I mean, he could, but at least have looked up what rating agencies do on Wikipedia. So you can ask him one intelligent question specifically on his line of business.
Yeah, personally, what I used to do with a lot of these types of phone calls is just be prepared to, start the conversation. A lot of times they don't really know where to lead the conversation, and sometimes they do. So when you kind of start the phone call, feel out, see if they want to, take it somewhere, but usually they don't, because they don't really know what you want. So make sure that you're kind of ready to explain, just tell who you are, kind of where you're at, and what, and as you're saying it, kind of, in a way, show that you're capable, that you're well-spoken, that you can do, that you can be someone, if they want to recommend you, that's something that they can do. You don't want to go into the conversation just kind of, not sure where it's going, definitely, if having questions in the back pocket works, okay. But you know, as Jacob said, don't use them just to use them. Make sure that, you know, the conversation is flowing nicely, and that you're showing that you're personal, because as we kind of said in the last, you know, question, that's a big part of it, just showing that you're a human being and showing that you're somebody who you can talk to.
Yeah, and just to add to that, another big point, a lot of bankers, and I'm sure lots of people in Wall Street in general, have, you know, type A personalities and are people who like to talk about themselves. So I found it really helpful to just be like, oh, you know what, I see that you're investment banking. How'd you decide to start doing investment banking straight out of college? And then they start telling a story. Say, oh, a lot of people transferred to private equity or the buy side. Why'd you stay? And then they're like talking about that. And oh, you switched out of the real estate group and you went to consumer retail group. You know, how was that transition? People could just talk and talk and talk about what they do, why they do it, how much they love it, you know, how awesome it is. So if you know, if you don't think that you have so much to say, chances are the other person on the phone will have plenty to talk about. So as long as you're asking the right questions and intelligent questions, and you're leading them, and you know, most people, like from my experience, most people are more than happy to talk about their backgrounds. That's always, you have that in your back pocket if need be. Just ask them more questions about what they do or how they do it. I wouldn't say like, oh, what does your day-to-day look like? Because you probably should already know what their day-to-day looks like before you get on that phone call. But if you ask them, oh, why'd you switch out of your group? Or, oh, you transferred from Morgan Stanley to JP Morgan, you know, what was that like? Or why'd you end up doing that? Those are questions that people like to answer.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, I think a few, you know, just get on these networking calls, a few things to have in mind is that every call you go with, you know, you're just keep in mind that you're representing yourself, right? Your own personal brand, and also the Yeshiva University brand or Yeshiva brand, right? You know, chances are, really depending on how you network, there might be people that just have no idea what Yeshiva is, and that's fine. But make sure that, you know, that one Yeshiva kid they spoke to, they had a great impression. And I would also say you just never know where a call or, you know, sometimes a chat could take you. You never know if, you know, you have this random, someone a little bit more senior, a little bit more junior. You never know how much power or what impact you'll leave on them and what can ultimately translate. I can say for myself, I've gone into calls just having the lowest of expectations, and then, you know, thankfully it's blossomed and developed into much more. So just something else to have in mind. But just want to call it here. It's 9 o'clock. Thank you guys, panelists, so much for coming. Thank you, students, for coming. Look out for a follow-up email, just about quick summary, few tips, and obviously contact information. I'm sure you guys can reach out on LinkedIn. But thank you so much and have a great night.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys very much. Thanks, Nathan.